Let's start demystifying fabric basics. How fabric is made, the difference of fabrics and fibers and yarns, how it's made, the properties and actual qualities of fabric that you need to look for that determine is it appropriate for your sewing project. Because the better you understand the material that you work with, the sooner you're going to get the results that you want, and when you put on that garment that you've made, it'll feel just as you imagine it in your head. That's our aim for today. Sewing friends, welcome. My name is Evelyn Wood, and if you are brand new here, well, welcome. This video is actually part of a series, a 5-part series that I'm doing on Learn to Sew in 30 days or less. You can learn in less. And I've chunked it down into 5 different categories or areas that you really need to focus in when you start learning to sew your own clothes. This is how you can chunk it down and have a big visual roadmap of what it means to learn to sew, because it's not just your sewing machine. That's step 1, which we've been through, your machine and getting all started sewing. Then we broke it down and looked at tools, accessories, and all that stuff you need to get started sewing as well. And now we're moving into fabric because, this is a big one. Knowing fabric will help you in the next step, the next phase, which is then obviously looking at patterns and how I'm reading them. And we all know they suggest fabrics, but it means completely like nothing to us when we start. And I know because I've taught tens of thousands of people how to sew at this point. They're either here on YouTube or at vintagesewingschool.com. That's my online sewing school. And I know from experience, I've seen this so many times, that the more you get to know fabric and really know what you're looking for, not just names of stuff. It's not about memorizing names of fabric. It's about knowing what qualities, what properties, the performance of the fabric. Knowing that and knowing what to look for is the key to really then being able to match up the pattern and the fabric and have it just work out as you intended in your head. We're going to break this down a little bit. We're going to look at how fabric is made and the structure, so you can work out all those names. We'll then look at the difference between knit and wovens. Then we'll look at the different properties and qualities that you should actually be looking for that builds upon that information that we go through. So let's start with how fabric is made, because there's a lot of names that get thrown around and it is so confusing. So let's start with the big picture, fabric. So fabric are names like denim, georgette, chiffon, satin, crepe, velvet. The list is endless. These are all fabrics. This is how everything has been woven or knitted, and things we look for in fabric are the drape, are the structure, how tight weave, loose weave, and all these things. And don't worry, we're going to come back to all of that in a minute. But this is fabric. Fabric is made from different yarns. And so if you look closely at a piece of fabric, you'll usually be able to then pull off different pieces, right? And you can see all these pieces that it's made from this way and this way. These little individual strands here, these little threads are called yarns. And so this is what fabric is made up from. It can either be woven or knitted into fabric. So these yarns get woven, where think about it like a basket weave, one up, one down this way, one up, one down this way, and that is woven. Knitted fabrics, these yarns are then sort of knotted and looped rather than woven. They kind of get knotted and looped around, and that's how it provides that stretch, because in between those little knots, there's room for the fabric to give, and that's why it stretches a bit, right? That's our stretchy fabrics, our knits. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And so, right, just to recap, these yarns are made into fabric, and we went through all of our fabric names before. And so these can be woven either tight or loose, and that's all things that affect the quality of the fabric. Then we go one step deeper. These yarns here are actually made up of fibers. And so fibers are these little fluffy things. You try and pull one of these yarns apart and you'll start to see all these fluffy little strands, and might just pull off in little fluff. What these yarns are made from are the fibers. And now fiber names are things like wool, cotton, silk, polyester, acetate, right? This is the raw product from which fabric comes from, the raw material that fabric is made from. Let's just recap that. You start with the raw product, the fibers. They're things like polyester or cotton or linen or silk or wool. You start with these. These are processed and these are spun into long, thin yarns. And so then these long, thin yarns are then either woven or knitted into fabric. And they can be knitted or woven in many different ways that produce different types of fabrics, such as denim, chiffon, velvet. The list is endless here. And so you're probably thinking, okay, I think I'm getting it. Does that mean that you can have a polyester satin or a silk satin? Yes, you could, because satin is a type of fabric, but it could be made from either polyester or silk or many other things, of course. The same with lots of other fabrics. They could be made of lots of different types of fibers to make a different fabric. And let's keep that satin example. One made of polyester or one made of silk is going to perform and act very differently. And we'll talk about those types of things that we look for, those qualities, in coming up later in the video. With these fibers, of course, you have natural and synthetic fibers. Here's a little list of some of where they fall into, but that is another topic to go down, another rabbit hole for a different day. But I want to point out here the most confusing part of it all is that a lot of fabrics today are blends. And so it means blended fibers make up the fabric. So it could be a polycotton put together and it has a bit of both in there, or mostly it's polyester and something else. So think of it, polyester is often used to mimic other fibers, and so that's why it's used with a lot of things. But you might have a cotton spandex or a viscose poly wool blend, right? And it could be many different fibers blended in there to create different properties of different things to create that different fabric. There is much more. I could talk for hours on this subject, but I think there's some basics there for you to start understanding. So if a pattern envelope says cotton fabric, that is kind of useless because cotton is a fiber. So I'm going to help you to know what to pick from coming up. Don't worry, I won't leave you hanging. But just the names of different fabrics doesn't mean much, because I know I have seen linen fabric, right? Linen fabric marked in the store, and you look at it and it's linen cotton, or worse, it's 100% polyester, and you're just like so confused because, for one, all of those are fiber names. If you do set something listed as cotton fabric or linen fabric, you can probably assume that it just means a plain woven of that fabric. But again, just knowing the names of stuff is not kind of what we're going for here. Let's talk a little bit more about the difference between woven and knits, because these are your two main fabric types. There is a non-woven category, but that is not for today's lesson. You don't need to know about that one. All right, so we've got two main ones, woven and knits. So woven are, as we discussed before, think of a basket weave. You go one up, one down this way, one up, one down this way, and things are woven. So they could be woven two up, two down, two up, two down, and then two up, two down, two up, right? Or it could be one up, three down, one up, three down, and it creates more of a satin weave, right? So you've got more exposed yarns that are less interrupted, and that's when you get shinier fabrics, right? So they can be woven in many different ways. Tighter weaves have more thread count, what you call a thread count. So you know bed sheets that have a high thread count, they're all jam-packed in. And so on the other side of it, you've got your knits. So you're thinking, I've never heard of this before. These are your stretchy fabrics, what we commonly might, call a stretchy fabric, right? These are things like t-shirt fabrics, your jersey, pontes, rib, stretched French terry, all these types of things are knit fabrics. So as we said before, these are created, the yarns are actually looped and knotted together, and then that little gap in between means that they got more give and they stretch. Fabric can also stretch via adding different stretchy fibers, like elastane, for example. So you might find that you have a cotton spandex or a cotton elastane fabric, and that means it's going to stretch even more. You can get woven fabrics that have the addition of an elastane at 2 or 3% usually is all you need, and it will kind of stretch, though not really. So it's woven fabric, but it'll just have more of a give, like you'll just give a bit rather than full on stretch. So knits are a different construction that we're talking about here, and they require different sewing machines and needles to sew them. Well, not always different machines. I don't want to get you on the wrong track there. So knit fabrics, you've probably done this before. You thought, I'll just make an easy t-shirt, and you got this like lovely t-shirt fabric and you've sewn it and you've like done this and you hear that, oh, and all the threads are breaking. That's because your regular straight machine with your regular straight stitch, it's not meant to stretch. And so you can't use that on a stretch fabric because it doesn't stretch and it just breaks, like you probably just heard. So what do? You can absolutely sew stretch fabrics, knit fabrics on your regular sewing machine. You just need to change the stitches that you use. So you kind of use like a zigzag stitch and stretch stitch, and that is way out of the scope of today's video. But just know that you need different stitches and different needles. You need a special little ballpoint needle or a stretch needle that helps it go through and not pierce the fibers. Again, different topics for different days, but that's why it's so much more difficult to sew knits than it is woven fabrics on your straight sewing machine. And we'll talk about the easy things for beginners, obviously, at the end. Okay, so let's start talking some real nitty-gritty stuff here. If the names aren't so important, what do we need to look for in fabric? So what I want you to really start taking note of is the properties of fabric that's important to how it ends up performing in our garment, and i.e. probably how much you're going to either love it or hate it when it's on your body in that garment after you did all that hard work sewing it. So these include words and terms like structure and drape. So a fabric that has structure is like it holds its shape, right? See how I hold this fabric and it's basically holding itself up? This is very structured fabric and is going to be easy to sew because it's quite structured, right? It's not moving and slipping. Whereas this fabric I'm wearing here, right? This is not the same. You can see I'm pulling this fabric out as if it was the sleeve. See, it's pretty much staying out there. This fabric here is not. This is what we call drape, that where it just falls and drops down on itself. This is drape. Have a look at this rayon crepe fabric here versus this plain wove cotton. Can you see how this falls really tightly down here, and this one just wants to like spring out, right? This is a structured fabric, this is a drapey fabric. These are things you need to look for because it feels very different in different garments. Structure is easier than drape. Drape likes to slip and move. Whilst it's beautiful, it can pose issues when you very first start. The next thing you want to look at is weight. And so the weight of the fabric refers to how heavy the GSM or grams per square meter, and I've made videos on how to buy fabric online that can really help you explain that further. But also what we really mean by this is the thickness, because how thick the fabric is, right? How actual thick it is. You fold it over itself many times, how thick it is. So the weight and thickness we kind of use the same. What we mean is when we have a top, we want it usually to be lighter, right? We don't want it too thick. Imagine jeans material as a top. It would be really thick and bulky for the top, right? But it's appropriate for the bottoms because we actually do want something more thicker and heavy duty for our bottoms. For example, you don't want a very light, almost sheer see-through cotton, right? Like semi-sheer cotton for a skirt or a pants, right? It's just too thin. So usually we have lighter on the top and a little bit heavier down the bottom. And fabric weight goes on a scale from like super lightweight to medium to heavyweight, and then there's everything in between there. And all those GSM numbers refer to a scale on there of how heavy it is, i.e. how thick the fabric is. Because for example, a denim could be a super heavy denim or it could be a lightweight denim and falls like in the light to medium weight category. They are very two different fabrics that mean very two different things when you sew it up in a garment. So the pattern envelope just saying denim is not as useful as you originally thought, right? When we move on to knit fabrics, one of the most important things to look at is the stretch percent. And so this means when you stretch your knit fabric, how much it stretches. So if we keep this one stationary here, it is how far it will actually stretch out, because you'll find some fabrics will only want to stretch to here and other fabrics will stretch out to here. And so patterns are made accordingly with the amount of stretch percent already factored into it, because you need to get in and out of that garment, remember, and it's got to stretch around your body, so it needs the right amount of stretch to fit you the way that the pattern designer intended it. Every pattern will come with a little stretch guide for you so you don't get confused and you know how much it is. And don't worry, it's pretty easy. You put it down and you stretch it out, and as long as it hits the mark that it's at for that pattern, you're good to go. So some of the biggest mistakes that we make here as beginners is that we don't know what these qualities even are. And it's something you have to learn by experience, because you make something that doesn't drape or it doesn't hold structure the way that you thought it should in your head, because you didn't even know that was a thing to look for, right? And so it helps to know that ahead of time. We all make something up. We think, can we just interchange stretch and wovens? And I think you already know the answer now. Absolutely not. They're different patterns, they're different things. And just picking the wrong fabric for the wrong pattern or design, or it performs differently than we envisioned in our mind, and therefore we're disappointed at the end. Happens to all of us. But when you start looking at it in qualities rather than just names of fabrics, that is really the key to start being able to choose and know what you're looking for when you go to pick fabrics, be it in-store or online. Now, if you're thinking, this is amazing, I wish I had a pen and paper and were taking notes because this was gold. Thank you. No, it is gold information, and that is what I have done for you. I have just launched, some of you might know, YouTube membership. And so we're calling it Sew Club because, you know, once you're in, right? Everyone wants to be as part of Sew Club. So it is the place here on YouTube where you can basically be part of the community even further here. Show your support and love and help me and this channel keep going to give you these YouTube videos. In there, you'll find every video I'm going to do printables and PDFs for the videos that I do. So I'm basically going to take the notes for you so you don't have to write them all down, and you can basically build your own beautiful little folder of all this sewing knowledge, like golden nugget knowledge, in one little spot for you, so you don't have to take the notes. That's every video. And plus we'll have extra videos, behind the scenes stuff, and I'm thinking some extended versions. And you know what? There is an extended version of this video right here, because fabrics I could talk for hours about, and there is so much here. I've got an extended video there for all YouTube members. So head on over now and you can watch that. Okay, so what should you actually focus on and what should you buy as a beginner? All right, so I want you to think of fabric as, or difficult fabric, i.e. that evil fabric that we all know and we all hate. That is a different thing to have to worry about learning. So dealing with, remember that, you know, stretchy velvet fabric with sequins that I made a mistake of using when I first started? That is a terrible fabric. It is stretchy. One, that's hard. Velvet is also very hard to deal with. And I had sequins as well. I mean, what was I thinking? So just sewing with that fabric alone, even as an experienced sewist, that is a thing to have to learn and navigate and manage. And so you don't want a difficult fabric on top of learning to sew that everything is difficult, right? Why add one more thing? That's the opposite of what we want to do. We want to remove all of the levels of difficulty to come back to as simple as possible so you can focus on learning actually sewing at your machine, getting straight lines, getting curved lines, nice, right? Doing your seam finishes, following your pattern instructions, what are the notches, all those types of things. That's what you focus on. So you pick a nice, easy fabric to work with, and then you build up to using more difficult fabric. And I know what you're thinking, all the difficult fabrics, all the pretty fabric, right? Why is it all the pretty fabric? I know, it just comes like that. But there are lots of great fabrics that are still easy to work with. So what are they? So you want a stable, plain woven fabric. So plain weave, right? We want it nice and stable, a bit of structure to it, not slippery. Something like this is really, really good to sew. And about a medium sort of weight is really good. This is much like your quilting cottons, is the best example to give you. That is perfect. It's a good weight, it's nice and structured, it's easy to sew with, it's really, really good. What do you want to avoid? So avoid knits, unless that's what you want to do, but just get prepared and make sure you're geared and everything is ready for sewing knits, and it'll be fine. Avoid slippery things. So things that like have beautiful soft drape, right? But that means they're going to move around on the table as you're cutting it on your sewing machine. It's going to slip and slide. It'll be a nightmare. Things that are very thick, so like thick denims, if you just roll it over a few times and you're like, wow, that's a lot of fabric, that's going to be hard at your machine. So think about very thick things on that scale and very thin things. So if it's super thin, like sheer, it's going to be just as difficult to sew as something thick. So you want to avoid that. That nice weight in the middle is always a good spot. My big tip for you as a very beginner is to buy some thrifted old bed sheets, or maybe you have some at home. These are plain woven fabric. It's good because you can get them for next to nothing and you can cut them up and just sew, and you're not attached to it, so you don't stress about having to mess it up or ruin your good expensive fabric. So just do all your testing and just go to town on all those. Thrifted bed sheets are gold. Fabric does take time to learn, and you will 100% make wrong fabric choices. If you haven't already, it's coming, and you will still. I mean, I do occasionally still. It's just that you get better and better at choosing the right fabric and knowing what is appropriate for your design and for your skill level, and kind of balancing those out. But it is a long game. Don't expect to learn this quickly. It's something that you will learn over time, I promise you, and you will be able to sew with those beautiful, amazing fabrics before you know it. Now that you are armed with all of that information about fabrics, if you want that printable, the notes version, remember the YouTube membership is there, but I want to hear in the comments from you. Tell me your biggest fabric disaster. I would love to hear it because it is so funny. And make sure you're ready for the next video, number 4, where we talk about sewing patterns, how to choose the right size, the right style, matching it all up. Oh, I cannot wait for that one. So until then, my sewing friends, happy sewing. Bye.